Welcome back. Let's return to the German investment drive, the implications for Europe as well, and look at what role deep tech might play in turning around the nation's economic fortunes and those of the continent. I'm joined now by Filip Dames, founding partner at Cherry Ventures, which has invested in some of the startups putting Europe at the forefront of innovation, including Proxima Fusion, Robeauté, which is a micro-robotics company, and the Exploration Company, which is a space tech company as well, based over on the continent. Filip, thank you very much indeed for joining us bright and early this morning in the studio. Are we really on the cusp, potentially, of a resurgence when it comes to deep tech in Europe? Are the ingredients there now?
Yeah, so deep tech is the hard stuff, Tom. So it means it requires talent, it requires the capital to build these companies, and it requires a huge amount of ambition. And I think in Europe today we have all three of these ingredients. If you look at the numbers, Europe has more researchers than any other continent in the world. We have the capital now available. That's also why we've raised our recent 500 million pool of funds at the beginning of this year. And we have the ambitions. I think founders want to build big things, want to work on the hard stuff. And yeah, Proxima, Robeauté, the Exploration Companies, all great examples of this.
So some of those things are coming together to create an environment that can actually build out deep tech companies that can have traction, not just in Europe, but globally. What though are the headwinds? What are the roadblocks that need to be overcome to get to that point where these are really scalable businesses?
Well, first of all, I think it is what needs to be done right now in Europe. We are lagging behind. If you look at R&D spending, Max 7 is spending more on R&D than the entire public companies in Europe combined. So there's a huge catch-up that needs to happen at the moment. Yes, there are obstacles. If you look at the late-stage funding, Europe's still lacking the very large funds to back these companies at the later stage. This is why the public sector is a bit more important in Europe. We can talk about that. And you know, we are still struggling with some things around bureaucracy in Europe. But overall, generally speaking, I think Europe's ready to build these kind of companies. We're super excited about the momentum that we currently have in deep tech in Europe.
Well, let's talk about the growth stage and the late stage funding. You talked about that being one of the potential challenges and the role of the public sector. What does that look like in terms of releasing a capital for companies at that stage, the later stage in their lives? You traditionally back early stage, and then you come in at the B round as well. But late stage, what needs to happen specifically on that front? And are you seeing any changes?
Yeah, so there needs to be collaboration between public and private sector. That is something that we're seeing, for example, with the Exploration Company, also with Proxima, where the state of Bavaria has been very supportive in terms of getting the real estate necessary for the first fusion power plant that they're building. And we need bigger funds in Europe. So we're also seeing a trend of more large institutional investors committing to venture capital as an asset class. Venture capital is needed to fund these businesses. These companies won't be profitable for the first 7, 8 years, sometimes longer of their journey. We need to have that patience. We need to have the stamina. And it just requires more money than a traditional software business.
When do we see, we've been talking about the headlines around NVIDIA crossing $4 trillion in terms of market cap. When do we see Europe's first $1 trillion company? How many years away are we from that?
Well, we are here to back that first European $1 trillion company, so we hope it's going to be soon. We have some companies that are incredibly exciting in the starting blocks. If you look at Proxima, also if you look at Helsing, for example, other companies that are really pushing the bar in terms of what's possible in Europe. So I think it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. And particularly in AI, particularly in sort of everything around sort of European resilience, defense, energy, space, I think we'll see some great outcomes in Europe over the next decade.
Yeah, so Proxima Fusion, based in Munich, and they're focused on examples around building out fusion technology, and they have some really impressive advancements on that front. And then Space Tech, of course, the Exploration Company in Space Tech. And then Helsing, which is a defense tech company. In AI, where does Europe extract the value? Where should Europe be positioning in the stack when it comes to AI?
So Europe needs everything. Europe needs innovation on the infrastructure layer and on the application layer. We've been seeing some interesting companies like Black Forest Labs, that is an image and video model based out of Germany, or Mistral, which is a European-based LLM based out of France. So we have seen some strong companies on the infrastructure layer. On the application layer, Europe has also been creating some very interesting businesses. So application AI means, how is AI being used? You know, with AI, we are facing one of the most important technological shifts that we've ever seen since the beginning of the internet. Companies are just starting to use AI. Everyone's talking about it, but if you look at the numbers, it's really a low percentage of companies that has actually implemented AI into all of their processes. And also consumer behavior will shift from traditional search models to LLMs, right? If you look at how search engines are being used by consumers today. So we'll see this massive shift, and Europe can play a big role both on the infrastructure side and on the application side as well.
On the funding side, you'd raised $500 million at the early part of this year. Quite a feat in a time when there are those liquidity constraints and LPs are concerned, particularly around exits. There's a lack of exits. It's very difficult to recycle cash and get that liquidity out of these investments. How is that story playing out? Are we seeing more secondaries in this environment? Do exits come back? Do IPOs come back? Are we looking at acquisitions?
So now we're coming from a time of zero interest rates and are now in a very, very different market than what it used to be. So the IPOs are still at a very low level. We're seeing them come back. We've actually seen M&A activity increase significantly over the last months. And at the end, it is about quality, right? We will see strong companies with strong earnings, strong revenue growth out of Europe, and these companies will be able to go public eventually. And that will fuel, obviously, money coming back to the ecosystem, and then, you know, more funds being raised and, more companies being created, more innovation.
OK, Filip, thank you very much indeed for coming to the studio to talk about deep tech and the prospects in Europe. Maybe a turning point on that front. Filip Dames, founding partner of Cherry Ventures, backing some of the most exciting startups in the deep tech space here in Europe.